Hello, guys. Stand by for a quick intro. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Canby, and this is episode 77 with Luke Richardson of England. The former Europe's Strongest Man and World's Strongest Man finalist has been on a hot streak, earning 2 podium finishes at the Giants Lab show and also qualifying for next year's World's Strongest Man. So let's sit down, talk all things strongman, figure out why is he so strong and what does the future hold for the future on today's episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast with Luke Richardson. This week's episode is sponsored by Tsunami Bar Sports.com, and consider being a member if you're enjoying the show and want access to exclusive videos and all things Canby Dude. With no further ado, let's get to our guest of Luke Richardson on this week's episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. And we're here. Hello, mate. How are you?
How you doing? That was brilliant.
Thank you. So I got to kind of take a little deep dive. So one thing I came across was those videos of you and Evan, which are pretty hilarious. So I like anytime that anybody's making fun of Evan or trolling Evan, that's great content for me.
Yeah, it's very easy to troll Evan. He's a sensitive soul. Bless him.
And he just, I think he just deserves it too. So I think
he definitely does. Yeah.
But yeah, so right now you're probably feeling pretty good. You're coming off some pretty good streak. Now, how did it feel kind of finish off the last Giants Live of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it was really good. Obviously, it's been a short season for me because, as I tend to do, I got injured. So I had probably the biggest surgery that I've ever had, which for me is a lot at the start of this year. So that put me out of basically all of our big title comps at the start of the year. But I'm probably still not in like the shape that I know I can be in. But obviously, I've podiumed twice now at the 2 most recent Giants Lives in good lineups, and I think as well, like with 2 very different shows in terms of events. Like I think the first one in Birmingham was super athletic, and then the one in Glasgow just gone was a bit more static as well. So I've kind of proved that I can kind of do it all, really, I think. So yeah, it was really good. Yeah, nice to know I've still got it.
So no more competitions for the rest of the year, is that correct?
No, I think that obviously this is like completely speculation, but they decided the rogue lineup like a lot earlier than the year, didn't they? Because I think it would be really hard to kind of put me out the top 10 best strongmen in the world currently in current form. But obviously the Rogues in like 2 weeks' time, isn't it? So for me now, yeah, it's just off season. Get ready for Britain's Strongest Man, 1st of February.
Sure. So what are some of your off season goals going forward?
To be honest, my off season training is just going to be the same kind of as my in season training now. Obviously, as someone who kind of has a tendency to hurt himself, I just kind of stick in GPP phases now, to be honest, mate. So I'm just kind of training everything, kind of touching everything a little bit, not doing any events, just doing kind of like general gym training, making sure I'm fit, making sure nothing hurts, basically. So yeah, just building for next year. Now, obviously, off the back end of the surgeries, like I said earlier, I'm still not back at 100%. So I think just some general training for a few more months will kind of see me back to what I believe could be, I'm probably already in my best shape ever, but a really competitive shape for next year with a few more months training. So
absolutely. So you have your eye on British Strongest Man next. That should be a pretty interesting show because of course it's rumored so far that Tom won't come back to it because he wants to focus on the big 4. So of course that could be anybody's game. Everybody wants to be British Strongest Man. I imagine that's a pretty big title for anybody in the country.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know Tom isn't doing Britain's, but I feel like if Tom did do Britain's, I could beat him.
All right.
Just being honest. Do you know what I mean? Like Tom does have bad events. Like look at Glasgow this weekend with her cold and stuff like that in it. I think. And the shape I got in for Britain's last year, I feel like I'd have been challenging Tom there. Obviously, it does blow it wide open. Like, I'm not acting like Tom wouldn't be a heavy favourite for that. Like, of course he would be as Tom Stoltman. But I think I can beat Tom. I know I can. So I think hopefully if I start next year, I think I should. I've got a very strong intent to kind of try and win Britain's and win Europe's at the start of next year. They're my
All
two
right.
main.
So that was my next question. So with right
Yeah.
now, it's no there's no speculation because top three at Giants Live automatically gets you into World's Strongest Man next year. So you'll still consider Europe's and then hopefully go into Worlds.
Yeah, I think with the training style that me and Shane kind of have going now, like for Birmingham, I did like two free event sessions. For Glasgow, I did 2 or 3 event sessions. I just kind of tickle the kit, really. Kind of reinforce that I know how to do it and then leave it there so that I don't have a chance to tear a tendon off. So I'll probably look to do the same for Britain's. And then obviously Europe's, there's usually quite a bit of a crossover with the Europe's events and the World's events because they're usually quite close. So that lines up well as well.
So this past year it was about like a 3-week difference because of course I was in the mix. That's where I met you for the first time. And then and for some reason they wouldn't let you in the backstage. I don't know what the whole deal was that.
Well,
that's where I saw you. So I came outside.
Oh, you came walking past
my wife. It was you and the infamous Mitch Flowers outside. And they were giving you guys a hard time about coming in. But last year looks like, or this past year was about 3 weeks difference. This year, I think they're saying World's Strongest Man is going to be mid-May, and then Europe's is scheduled for April 5th. So that's almost 5 or 6 weeks. So potentially, I don't know how Froggy, Colin, and Darren and the rest of the Giants Live crew are going to get about the events, but potentially, I don't know, they might be mix and match. But I'm guessing it's going to be similar events. I think that's what they normally do. But I like that there's got to be a little more of a break. Maybe there's going to be potentially 5 or 6 weeks compared to 2 or 3.
Yeah, because I think that's the problem as well. Like, obviously, for the European, like, if you're from Europe, you want to win Europe's Strongest Man. Mm-hmm. So it'd be a shame that kind of for some guys, they feel like they can't do that because it does kind of like limit their performance capabilities at World's Strongest Man. So I like that they've increased the amount of time between the 2 comps because you want the best guys at both. You don't want it to be like, oh, well, I want to do one because I can't do both. Like, it's a comp and it's a big title. It's a huge title for guys to have. So obviously, you know yourself, you've competed at the comp, it's a great comp.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, from a personal perspective as well, like kind of going like back to Brits as well. Like, I want Tom to be there because you kind of don't want to win a title. Like, I've won a title before. When I won Europe's in 2020, it was a COVID year and the lineup was weaker. Let's be honest, it was. There was a lot of guys who were invited and decided not to come, which wasn't my fault. And then I ended up winning, and I ended up getting a bit of a slagging for it as well. So as a competitor, if you win a competition, you want there to be no, like, it's not up to me if some guy comes or some guy doesn't. You beat who's there. And for me personally, as a competitor, you want the best guys there so that when you beat everyone and you've got the title, there's no question.
So ideally, you want the big bad albatross over there.
Yeah, I want everyone there. Yeah, I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like, that's what we all get into sport. We're all competitive. We all want to beat each other. And yeah, like I respect the hell out of the guy and what he can do. He's a fucking awesome athlete. He's the best athlete that's ever been out of this country. So it'd mean a lot to beat someone like that. And if you did, then you know you've earned it as well. So yeah.
But it should be interesting at BSM because, of course, you have someone the likes of Bishop coming back as he's coming back off an injury. You have Hicksey coming back into full shows. Of course, the other Luke Stoltman is looking really good right now. So it should be really interesting how that all shapes up.
It'd be really competitive at Britain's. Obviously, you've got Shane Flowers as well, Kane Francis.
Shane is. Yeah, it'd be interesting how he does at Magnus. But yeah, I know I think he has his sights set for 2025 to be back to full form.
Yeah, Britain's is a super competitive lineup now. Like, especially when you look at how many like World's Strongest Man finalists are in Britain's Strongest Man. It's probably like, if everyone does it, it's probably like 6, 7. Do you know what I mean? And it's a really hard comp. Do you know what I mean? So if you win that, like, you're doing well. So
absolutely, and we can't forget about Big Gav as well.
I thought you said Gav. Yeah, Big Gav. I love Gav.
He's huge. Trying to get him on. I'm trying to slowly get him on the show, but I think he's going to make some time for me eventually. So of course, I want to get into a little bit of course, you're overcome at a lot of adversity, of course, through their injuries and all. Of course, I admire your resiliency. Of course, keeping your head down, focusing on what you need to do, what you can do in that moment, and get back to the shape. And you mentioned before, you feel like you're almost at your best editor shape, but with still some room to grow. So what's that mindset in order to get back into that shape? Like where do you have to go in order to get yourself back into the right place?
I mean, yeah, it was like, I mean, it's easily the hardest thing I've ever done, like by a country mile. It was, at times it was like very, very tough. Obviously, as someone who competes at this level, you know yourself, like in order to compete at this level, like it has to be your life. It's kind of all encompassing. It's the food, the sleep, it's the training. And it's not even the training that's the hard thing. The hardest thing about being injured was that I couldn't train because I'm someone with the temperament, as you will be as well, where I've trained my whole life. I had a career in powerlifting before this. When I was younger, I played every sport you could ever possibly think of. It was kind of like my therapy. Do you know what I mean? Training's my outlet for just, it's my outlet for just being a man and wanting to conquer and beat people down and stuff like that without it being destructive. So when I couldn't do that anymore, when I couldn't even train, like it was, I tore my bicep for the first time in 2021, and I was probably on a bit of like an ego trip at that point. So I was kind of like, because I was like hot shit then. Do you know what I mean? Like
you're coming off a World's Strongest Man final in 2020, correct?
Yeah. So obviously I'd done all my powerlifting career. I like won world titles and that, broke world records, like did some crazy shit there at like a young age, which I look back now and I'm like, fucking hell, that was crazy. I can't believe I was doing that at that age. But then obviously I came into Strongman. I think I won Europe's Strongest Man basically within near enough my first year of training in the sport. Made worlds my first year as well, probably like after 18 months of training, and then got in shape for kind of 2021 thinking, right, I'll try and top 5 at Worlds this year. And then in the first to enter the heats, I blew my bicep off. But at that point, I was kind of like, yeah, everyone blows their biceps off. Like, I'll be fine. And then I ended up having a knee surgery in the December, a cartilage one, and that was really bad. Like, it was probably one of my hardest rehabs I've done. To be honest.
Was it a quad tear? Was it patella? Was it like
no? It was just cartilage. It was my patellofemoral cartilage. So it was a keyhole surgery. It was arthroscopy, but it was, it wrote my knee off. It was so bad. Because usually when people get meniscus and stuff like that done, they're back playing sport in kind of like 6 to 8 weeks. Like this were bad. Like my quad atrophied like ridiculously. Like I found it really hard to get it back. I couldn't really do much for it's only really in the last kind of year that my knees started to feel normal again, just from a simple kind of like cartilage clean out surgery. And then I re-ruptured my bicep again.
Same arm?
Yep, same arm. But I re-ruptured it 9 months after the operation. So it wasn't like I was silly with the rehab. It never felt right. And I was like, I wonder if this is just how it's going to feel now. But then obviously I tore it like my second stone session back. I was doing like a 120 kilo Atlas stone and it tore off. So then I went and had that surgery. I have a Achilles tendon graft put in my arm now because obviously I tore it twice. So it was too short to return to the bone. So they had to attach a Achilles tendon to my tendon and then attach it back to my forearm.
Where did the Achilles tendon come from?
A dead person.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have 2 scars on this arm because it was so short. Because it was so short, they had to go in here and attach it and then thread it back down there. But that was a tough surgery. After that surgery, I kind of hit like what I'd consider rock bottom after that surgery, at least mentally, because I couldn't straighten my arm for about 17, 18 weeks. So I couldn't straighten my arm for about 4.5 months. I couldn't train lower because my knee was fucked. So I was just kind of like, what do I do? I was trying to go in the gym and train. I couldn't do anything like without being in pain. So I was just miserable. Like, because I'd usually go to the gym to feel better, and I was going to the gym and feeling like horrendously worse because it was just reminding me that like how far I'd fallen almost. I was like, fuck, like I'm used to being one of the strongest people in the world and I can't do anything. Like my body's fucked. So it was really quite a daunting prospect because obviously my goal was always trying to like return to the level that I am now, but it just seemed an absolute fucking light year away.
So what did you tell yourself during that time?
To be honest, during that time, my head was scrambled. I went and lived. My girlfriend Laura, she was studying at the time, so she was living back home because she's from Ireland. So I went to Ireland because the problem was, it's like as human beings, we're all like it. We associate certain behaviors and patterns of behavior with places where we are. And strongman is kind of like, when I'm here at home in England, like I live 15 minutes from Giants Live. I've got my gym. I've got like all these gyms around me, and I couldn't use any of them. So when I get home, I'm like in mode, like I'm doing strongman. So I was like, right, I need to leave. I need to get away from here. So I went and lived at hers for about probably like half a year. It felt like a bit of like a mental rehab, not even just a physical one, biding the time to kind of just let my body get better, because mate, I was just smashing like painkillers, like I was smashing morphine. I was just I was like, it wasn't for pain. It was just like, just stop this voice in my head. Stop it. I can't deal with it. Do you know what I mean? Which is funny for me now, looking back, with someone who kind of feels like he's got the tools to deal with these situations, to realize that, because it's funny, but before I started all the injuries, if you asked me kind of like, oh, what was your mindset like? I'd say bulletproof, like unfazed, unfazable. Like I'm fine. Like nothing will ever faze me. And then it was like weird that I got to a point where it was just like I felt like nothing. I felt useless. I felt like I was just like, what's the fucking point anymore? Like literally, I was just like, what's the point, mate? I'm just gonna get off my head, numb this like feeling of just, because it's weird, because I knew what I needed to do to rehab back was wait, and I'm not a guy who likes waiting. Like part of being good at something has usually been quite like driven, very determined. I'm a very determined man. Do you know what I mean? And just having to sit there and wait for things to heal isn't part of my personality.
Was the bicep the toughest out of all the surgeries?
Yeah, probably mentally. Yeah, like the second bicep ruined me mentally. But I think from that I had a really good foundation, because more from a personal kind of like a personal character journey. There was some real hard conversations I had with myself during that time, where it was like, who are you then? Because you thought you were this guy and you're clearly fucking not. Do you know what I mean? Who are you? What are you about? What do you stand for? And then I came back. I obviously had to take a lot of time off after that, because I couldn't straighten my arm, like I said, for like 4 or 5 months. Like, and I couldn't do anything with my knee. So I was just training. I was like, asked Shane, I was like, Shane, can you put me something together to save me from this, please? Because I can't do it. Like, even if it's like squatting like a 2.5 kilo dumbbell, just please help me. Like, I need help. And something to focus on. That was it. I was like, right, I need a focus again. That's what I'd lost. I had no focus. So I started training again. I was like squatting 20 kilos. I was going like 10 kilo a session, 20 kilos, 30 kilos, 40 kilos, 50. I did that for about 5 months. Do you know what I mean? Just monotonous, boring, earning the right, getting back to it. And I was super humble. Like I was probably the most humbled I've ever been by an experience. And I was training for Britain's Strongest Man in 2023, which was going to be my big comeback show. And the events were great for me. I'll be honest, I probably would have won. Saying it like, and I don't like saying stuff like that, because it's kind of like things happen. I know what competing's like, but I know what shape I was in. And then 9 days out from that comp, Britain's Strongest Man in 2023, I was doing my last deload session. I tore my lat off. So obviously it was like I'd been through 3 surgeries. I'd nearly 2 years out the sport. I'm 9 days out from what I was considering to be my homecoming victory at Britain's Strongest Man. I was already in shape. I did a deload session. I tore my lat off. I was like, right. Do you know what I mean?
Now, were you coaching yourself at that point, or was that more?
No, Shane was coaching me. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I didn't. There was nothing in the training. I'd never felt my lat before. I tore it on 300 kilos.
Oh, interesting. So maybe it was just almost on its way.
Yeah, but I never felt it.
And then, interesting. I couldn't imagine what a lat tear would feel like.
Very nice. But it was weird because originally I was like, oh, well, hopefully it's muscle, because then maybe I can still do something. And I went for an MRI, and it was like, nah, full thickness tendon tear, lat tendon tear. So I was like, right. So I had to go I had to go for another surgery in the February, and then obviously I had a lot of time off after that. But I was pretty, like, don't be wrong, like I can remember the day I tore it off. I literally just got in the car. Laura was training with me at the time. Me and Laura got in the car and we were both just like crying. I was just crying my eyes out because I was like, it got to a point where I feel like I'd gone on. I feel like I kind of deserved the first three. Do you know what I mean? Because it was very egotistical. I kind of let it infiltrate my judgment, and it was all about like pushing, winning, like overdoing it. That's how I ultimately ended up doing my first three, was overdoing it. Whereas for this one, I proper humbled myself, stayed within myself. Now I'm not getting carried away with beating him or beating that. I'm just training. And I felt like I'd gone on a real character arc and I'd real settled down. And then it was just like, do you know what I mean? It was like I chased the carrot for 2 years, and I was finally about to take a bite of it, and then I tore my lat off. And then this is the thing as well, like you tear your lat off, it's like I was in crippling financial situation because I've had 3 surgeries that I've had to pay for. And then it's like I thought I was going to be getting a big payday from Britain's where it was all finally going to pay off and I'd be able to pay this debt off. And then I have to pay another 6-7 grand to just have my lat put back on again. Do you know what I mean?
So we're thinking, so lat, your hammy, biceps. So we got to the Giants, and we got to Giants Live, and you podium first time behind Mitch and Maxine, and then it's the second time behind Mitch and Trey. Like, what did that mean to you?
Oh, it was massive. Like, because obviously, like, I hadn't actually torn my hamstring. So I like did England's Strongest Man at the end of 2023, which I was in good shape for. I think I won that by I won it before the last event pretty much. And then I started training for Britain's again at the start of this year. And then that's when I tore my proximal hamstring off. And then obviously I went for that surgery in London. And that was like going to be a big show for me. Like, oh, I'm finally like going to win, like I'm going to be able to do all these shows, win Britain's. Like I feel like I was in podium at World Shape, and then I tore my proximal hamstring off, and that surgery was about 15,000 pounds. Do you know what I mean? And it was kind of like, yeah, that one was tough as well because I didn't know if I wanted to continue. To be honest, I was like, I don't know if maybe this is a sign. Like maybe I just need to give up. It was the first time after my hamstring where I was like, maybe I need to call it a day. Like I can't keep putting myself and everyone who loves me through this. Do you know what I mean?
It's almost like the meme of you ever see like the 2 diggers, one guy gives up but the other one is right next to the gold and he's only like a let's just say what's not a throwaway but a slash away from getting to the grand prize.
But this is the thing, like I'm quite a positive guy, so I'd always say I am a hopeless optimist. Do you know what I mean? Even if there's nothing to cling on to, I'll be like, obviously I've got this overwhelming belief in myself, which is the reason why I've done what I've done in my life up till this point. And it's kind of like, the longer it went away from the injury, I was like, nah, do you know what? You can still fucking do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, what a story it'll be. And then it was at Birmingham, which was kind of like what you asked. It was like, I fucking done it. Like, it was an overwhelming feeling of like, I don't know, like not in a competitive sense because I know that everyone's different, but what I went through to get back to getting them 2 trophies at them 2 shows it'd have floored a lot of people. It really would. And I don't think that they'd have come out. I'm a better athlete now than I've ever been after 5 surgeries and 3 years of literally just getting shit on by the world. But I see it now. Do you know when I speak? Like I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mitch Hooper. Like what he can do as an athlete. I think it's funny because as someone who's in the sport, you're not really fans of the guys in the sport. They're more your friends. And Mitch is, I would consider Mitch a friend, but he's one of these people where like he's a modern day killer. Like he has a YouTube. It's amazing. His performances are amazing. The way he speaks do you know what I mean? Like I'm fascinated by mastery, and it just seems like he has mastery in every fucking.
He's also sucking up a lot of the attention from, I would say, the whole scene. Like he's like you're saying, like he's winning every contest, so he's racking up all that first place attention. And YouTube, he's killing it. I think he's past, like even the Stoltman brothers and even like where Martins is. So, and they spent years building their brand, and Mitch puts out a video once a day on top of like working, doing all these businesses and everything. So I have a later segment of like breaking down of, that's a question I always like to ask. Sometimes I ask people like, why do you think Mitch is as good as he is? But we're at the 25-minute mark. I got to do a quick commercial break. So you got you get a second to drink some water, and then we'll continue. So quick commercial break, guys. Are you ready to shake up your training? Are you ready for your next challenge? Tsunami Bar Sports is here to boost your power, stability, and coordination. Whether you're superloading and using it to target barbell-centric movements or using it for ballistic weighted plyometrics for more sport-specific purposes, the Tsunami Bar has you covered. Our patented and flexible barbell technology is designed to help you improve in all things human performance. Discover the difference at Tsunami Bar Sports today. Visit tsunamisports.com to learn more. Use CANBY10 for 10% off of any Tsunami Bar product, or pause the screen and use the QR code. Now back to the show. Have you ever experimented with a Tsunami Bar?
I've seen you using it. And I was just like, what does that even feel like? But it's quite interesting, really. It's like a really exaggerated version of like a weightlifter timing like the dip and the clean with like the oscillation of the bar, isn't it? Like,
so exaggerates all those, like the bottom part of the bend or the top part of the extension, even on squats, like even at the very bottom, like it just fighting that weird variable load.
You go really heavy on it, and I always thought something like that would be a bit more of like a stability tool, like a bit of a bamboo bar, but it's not. Like you throw mad weights around with it.
Yeah, I wanted to try. I just was like a side quest because I'm in my own off season right now. So I did for squats recently. I wanted to break the most I ever done and just kind of push the limits of it. But I also started doing it just because it was almost like nice rack positioning, because I can just kind of, it's like lower. It was here, so I didn't really have to force too much. And actually, since it bends around you, it's a little more comfortable than I was maybe like a straight metal bar. So that's sometimes why I kind of switch it up. But it is quite fun. But for all your UK friends, they do ship to the UK.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to kind of Shane about it on the last one.
Yeah, I remember you saying on that last episode. Yeah, I watched that one. Yeah.
But we were talking a little bit. So before the break, you mentioning, of course, you married Mitch. I think I was watching the Giants live stream, and you mentioned like you're a lot like Mitch, but instead of like first and seconds, you're getting third, fourth, and fifths. Now, do you think like if you had a very healthy offseason, you hit your goals, you hit your different metrics, that you could give Mitch a run for his money next year?
I don't know. I just like to be honest. I think that Mitch is going to the moon, to be honest.
Right.
I don't think he's even. I don't think we've seen the best of Mitch Hooper yet. Like, if I was to get better this year, I'd be like chasing Mitch at the end of this year. Like if I was like, oh, if I progress so much, like could I beat Mitch for show if he made a mistake in his current shape that he's in now? Possibly. But he's getting better. He's getting better as well. But I love stuff like that. Like even like just getting back into training now, like the comparing me, I respect the hell out of Mitch. I've got a ton of like admiration for the guy. He's absolutely brilliant. And it's kind of like you're eating the meals, and then at times where you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not going to eat this next meal." You're like, "Well, no, because you got to catch Mitch, Luke. You got to catch Mitch." You know what I mean? Or you're just training and you're making smarter decisions because you know that the goal that you need to achieve there's this guy in the way. Like, I don't see how that could make anyone bitter. I think Mitch annoys a lot of the top level pros because they're bitter. That's how it comes across to me. They can't go, he's amazing, I need to level up. It's almost like a level of entitlement on their behalf. Do you know what I mean? Like sport, the best guy wins. If Mitch is absolutely spanking everyone, then we've all got a kind of responsibility to step up. It's not on him to do anything. He's doing his job. Do you know what I mean? It's up to us to kind of do ours as well. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to be competitive against Mitch, but we'll just see. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So you're thinking that even as good as he has been this year, as good as he was last year, he still hasn't potentially hit his peak yet, which is pretty amazing. Like for instance, he would just it was almost like he's growing up through the pro system.
Yeah.
It looks like sorry, Luke. Looks like my camera keeps this new camera of mine keeps freezing, so that's why I keep changing in between.
All right, it's okay.
I don't know. It's just I'm trying to get it to work. I'm not really sure why it's not cooperating with us, but maybe one day I'll figure. Maybe I need to download the latest update. But so like it's interesting because of course he's very bright. He has that kind of physical therapy background, like kinesiology. Of course I think he does a really good job like utilizing information from all different sources. He tries out a million different things too. But like in your opinion, what do you think makes Mitch as good as he is?
I do think it's his brain. I do. I think there's a level of freedom in what Mitch does as well. I think he sees it for what it is. Like you can tell Mitch isn't like this. I need to die to do X, Y, Z in Strongman. Like he is having a massive impact, positive impact on a lot of people's lives. Like with his YouTube, he's obviously a great example of an athlete as well. And he's just trying to encourage people to exercise because he's loved exercising his whole life. But yeah, I think he's very grounded, and it's funny because he gets slagged a lot for being arrogant, but I don't think he's arrogant whatsoever. I think he's a man who knows what he can do, and I think he's a man that sees it for what it is as well. Like I could see Mitch retiring in like 2-3 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he'll be like, "This isn't good for my health, and I love my family a lot more than I love winning titles." How can you not respect the man? He knows what he wants. He knows what he wants to do. I really like people who just really stand up for what they believe in. Do you know what I mean? And when I look at Mitch and when I speak to Mitch, I know I'm speaking to him. I'm not speaking to like, it's not fake. He's a real guy. Like I respect the hell out of people like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think it's his brain that wins. He's just fucking brilliant. Like, yeah.
So on my first round when I had Brycey on the podcast, so this is in the 20s. I asked who's the smartest strongman because I did all these superlatives. I asked like who you think was the best, who was the fastest, who was the smelliest, and I asked who's like the smartest. And he said Mitch was the smartest, and that it was shortly after World's Strongest Man, so that's why I had Mitch on after. So I'm like, I gotta have to pick this guy's brain because he's doing something right that maybe some things are missing. So Alex Kelly, so bring up a comment. So he thinks he mogs everybody because his great cardio conditioning. I think that's a huge piece. Of course, one of the things I just have great disdain for is cardio as I keep growing and getting over 300 pounds. Yeah. But it is super important. I've even mentioned other guys. I know you probably, he still was kind of competing in the heavyweight scene at your time, but like someone like Andrew Clayton. And Andrew Clayton was also a huge runner and marathon. He did a lot more half marathons than he did full marathons. And was really big into endurance, but that kind of carried over into strongman. He did it during strongman, like he would compete and then he would do cardio. Mitch, of course, was doing marathons and lifting, and then went totally into strongman. I think Mitch mentioned something about like running 1 kilometer a day.
I actually started doing that.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's easy. But when this is the thing is that was kind of my little outlet because Mitch had just come into strongman after my second bicep rupture. And I was like, right, I can't lift weights, so I'm going to do loads of cardio. So I was going and doing an hour of zone 2 every day, which kind of shaped my like aerobic base, have you will, to come back on. Like I can do the Giants live shows now. And like there's never a point in the show where I'm like, this is too fast or I'm out of breath. Like I'm fine. You know what I mean? Like on Saturday, I ran 5K to just see if I could still do it because I feel like that's something Mitch would do. So I was like, right, can I run 5K? And I did.
How your knees?
So, huh?
Your knees felt good?
Yeah, my calves. My calves were destroyed because I did it in my barefoots as well. Because I was like, oh, I want a bit of like challenge like my foot strength as well. So I did that. But yeah, I think that's what you're going to see as well. And I actually agree with the fellow who said that because I think this is the thing. The disparity between performances in training to competition, especially in the latter half of a show, is usually caused by fatigue. But I think the reason that Mitch is able to perform so consistently in relation to training to competition performances, regardless of where the event shows up in the comp, is because he is so fit. Like he's always in a position to extract what he's created in the gym, regardless of where it is in the comp, because he's just simply not fatigued. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think his fitness is an enormous, it's an enormous plus, which is why I'm just copying Mitch. Whatever Mitch does, I am doing the same thing.
It's that's what you should for all the. I think everybody does some. No one's doing well by accident. So there's always some things that you could extract or some things, and that's part of the whole deal with the Strongman Winner Circle is extracting information so you can take it home and make yourself better. I want to get back to your running. So are you 150 kilos, 160 kilos these days?
150, yeah.
150. All right. So kind of what, 6'3", 6'2"?
6'3".
Okay, all right. So that's a lot because I recently got probably the last few months I've been upwards of 300 pounds for the first time. I spent 10 years at 105 kilo competing.
No, because I knew you were a really good 105, and when I saw you at Europe, so I was a bit like, I thought this guy was a fucking 105. He's massive. I was like, he's huge. What's happening?
Well, I ate my way to the heavyweights, but I just started even just doing like jump ropes, and that's destroying my feet and my calves. I think it kind of takes time. So I think I'm slowly kind of want to work up, but just I'm curious. Like, so you weren't too sore after that 5K?
Oh no, my calves were like, if I was training, it's because I was like having a deload week. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, I'd never do that. What I did start doing, because I don't train on I train on like an ace and increase split. So I don't train set days a week. I train one day on, one day off. Or like for Britons, I'm going to train whenever I feel like my body's ready to, because obviously my tendon structure is the limiting factor of my success in this sport. So I'm just allowing them to recover, because you know how it is, like your muscles recover quick, so they get more blood supply, don't they? Whereas like your tendons and stuff are slower. So, but what I was doing before these last few comps is I was basically doing my training. Like I'd lift my weights and I'd run a K at the end of my training session. So like every other day I was running a K.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking about doing elliptical after squats tonight, but maybe I'll try to do a jogging just to be inspired by you. But we're getting some interesting questions. Did you watch the recent Lilas video about him talking about the changes to World's Strongest Man?
I did.
I got through half of it. Maybe you can help me here. So what do you both think about the supposed changes coming to World's Strongest Man per the Lilas video? So it sounds like they're getting away from the stone off, and I forget what there was another major change, or was that the main one?
I can't. Obviously, it's all speculation. I'm not sure. Like, and I don't want to be the guy to be like, oh, I don't know what they've said. To be honest, I don't know where Lilas heard it from.
So, episode 60, I had Colin on, and then I followed up on episode like 70, or I think it was 70 or one of the 70s. But anyway, we talked about changes, like what can we substitute the stone off with? I said potentially a different event. So it could have been a press event, it could have been a farmer's event, it could be three or four events that they have to go through. But we put it like a bunch, probably 15 different ones. And of course, the viewers helped me, and we got them right in front of Colin. So I don't know if that potentially influenced the decision.
I don't know. I think all decisions from World's Strongest Man come with the TV production predominantly at the forefront of the decision making. So what I think that they're probably going to do is, I think that they'll keep stones in the heats. This is obviously just me speaking my mind based on what I think they'd want. I think they're going to keep stones in the heats, but like they did in 2018, everyone's going to have to do the stone run, because you've got to think, like, when the stone off is stupid. I think it's stupid, but I can see why it'd be good for TV, because it's like a showdown, isn't it? It's like a big showdown.
It's cool to watch.
Yeah, but like you have guys now purposely, like if you look at like Mitch and Andre at Worlds this year, you have Andre purposefully saving himself for the stone off throughout the entire heat. So you've got Mitch coasting the heats. You've got Andre coasting because he knows he's going to be in the stone off against someone. Then you have the guy in third kind of just knowing what he needs to do to come third.
Andrade, yeah.
Yeah, and then you kind of like end up with like a bit of a shit heat, because you've got Mitch who just knows what to do to win, and then he doesn't have to do like the last event before the stone off anyway, so he doesn't have to try. And then you've got Andrew's kind of like doing as little as possible because he knows he's going to come second, and then you've got Austin doing as little as possible to come third. So you end up with like not a true representation of kind of like the talent in the heats. Whereas like if everyone has to do every event, it's like, well, fair enough. If Mitch has it won before the stones, you will have to do the stones, but everyone else will. And it makes for a more exciting competition, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. So he came back. They said they would be 5 events in the finals, 5 athletes per group, no stone off. So does that mean only 25 athletes, maybe, or maybe 30 athletes, but 6 groups? That will be interesting.
It's always 5 groups, isn't it? It's been, but it's
5
weird because
athletes.
yeah, it's always 5 groups. I think the first year I did it in 2020, it was, and in 2021, it was only 5 guys in a heat, so it was 25 guys, and then they increased it to 30, but then maybe they've dropped back down to 25 now.
Sure. And then just a quick comment from Joseph Tower. Looks like you need Mitch back on the podcast. Mitch is big time. I'll see if I can get him back on.
I'm sure you'll be able to get him. I'm sure.
All right, I'll see. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. But thank God that the least, well, hopefully, ideally, we're both back at Europe's. We're both competing, and then those 5 events that we do at Europe's are going to be in the finals. So we'll have some sense. Maybe that'll be like a glorified training day, or we just go all out and then just YOLO for Worlds. I guess we'll see. But I think the big thing is just will be, hopefully there'll be a little more notice, or maybe it'll be a cool unveiling video of how they change it, or we just find out last minute what the new structure is. But I hope they keep the 30. I hope they don't cut down the athletes. That wouldn't be good for me, but good for you.
Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine, mate. I'll try podium at Europe.
Well, it's interesting because I get a lot of information. Of course, I'm not afraid to ask questions, as you know. So when I had Colin on, we were talking about the World's Strongest Man qualification system. So of course, top 3 at every Giants Live this year gets automatic invite. World's Strongest Man winners always get invited back. Then you have it looks like in every year the top 10 that make the finals get invited back, but they also are in the Giants Lives and they compete pretty well. But supposedly if they need more names after they go through all the World's Strongest Man winners, after they go through all the podiums of Giants Live, then they go through 4th, 5th, and 6th. So potentially I might sneak in through that 4th, 5th, and 6th. But I guess we'll see.
I mean, a lot of people give like World's Strongest Man a hard time for like their selection, but I don't know if it's just because I don't think I am biased. They've never invited someone ever really where I thought, what the fuck are you doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, I can always reason with why it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, if you podium, you get invited. If you have like a good performance, or you're from a country where they obviously want them to be represented, I don't think that's. Or they invite like a star, like a guy who's just a star. But it's like, well, I want it to make money. I think we all want it to make money so that we can be paid more money as athletes as well. Like, the reality is that the top guys are still going to be there regardless. Do you know what I mean? So if we're worrying about the integrity of the competition overall, well, the guys who are going to win it are kind of unaffected by that anyway.
Yeah,
do you know what I'm saying?
That's a good point.
Yeah, like if we're worrying about this guy being invited because he's from this country and then he gets to represent his country and there's another flag on the thing, or we're worried about this guy because he's been invited because he's like more popular or whatever. But if they're not going to do anything in the overall show and the final ends up with the 10 guys who'd be there anyway, then like, why do we care?
That's a pretty good point. I think there's a certain point in terms of fairness, but you understand there has to be a TV and there has to be
my point with the fairness is that like the top guys are the top guys. They're going to be the guys competing anyway. So it's kind of like, that'd be my point anyway, would be there's a balance, isn't there? There's a balance between making it interesting and then making it a comp. But the guys who are going to be winning the comp will be winning the comp regardless of if you invite this guy or another guy. It's irrelevant. They're better than them. So yeah.
I think the hardest job probably within Strongman is picking out the groups.
I think they do a good job of that. Well, as well with the seeding system. Like, obviously, if you're winning shows and you're a killer, you get a seed 1. Like, there's no point putting on, like, when people say put a random hat together, and it's like, well, imagine you ended up with a group with like Tom, Mitch, freaking Evan, me, Trey. Like, it'd be a disaster, wouldn't it? Like, then that'd actually affect the overall integrity of the full show.
I like the seeding system. I was a little not bummed. I always like to try to compete against different guys, but I competed with 42 for the 3rd straight time. So I faced him off at OSG. He got the better of me. I faced him off at Europe's, got the better of me, and then I faced him off at Worlds. I'm like,
oh, you were on just group at Worlds as well.
Yeah, so 3 straight groups. Right. Yeah, so I was there during like Mitch's 42s and Andrade's talks. Was like, all right, guys, we're We're all going to we want to make the finals, make the stone off. So like Mitch was trying to scheme. 42 kind of bought in. I think that was in the talks with 42 and even with Colin, if you guys go back in the podcast. And then Andrade was like, I'm going to go all out. I respect what you guys do, but I'm a competitor. I'm going to go all out. But yeah, but of course, in the scene, I'm like holding my arm, like, what you guys talking about? What you guys doing?
I coach Andra.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
So I was like looking at the results, thinking like, fucking it. I was like, if you got Mitch making deals with you, know you're fucking good. You know what I mean? So
let's talk about it, because I actually have a question. So I know you're 42's coach. I know you were training him, especially during the log press going for the junior world record. It was amazing when I saw him do 210 kilos or 460 pounds for 2 in training. So what were you programming, or how did you get him into that? I know he was already a great log presser, but like, what did you program, or how did you coach him into doing so well that day?
Yeah, so like with Andra actually had like really bad knees for quite some time, to be honest. So before we peaked his push press log for the World Log Lift Championships, he was just doing predominantly strict, or just like absolutely smashing strict volume, because you can with strict log, can't you? You can get away with doing a lot more. Usually the limiting factor, I know Shane said this earlier, it's just true. Like, especially when you're a big log presser, I think that the limiting factor usually is your knees, really. It's quite a hard position to be in on log. I know someone like you're really skillful, aren't you? You've got like a good weightlifting background. I don't really get sore knees on log, but then I don't do much kind of like log push press volume. I'd kind of bias mostly strict, then keeping the push familiar from a technical perspective. But yeah, that's basically Andra did a 210 strict log before we started. Like, I basically had a strict log up, and then we were like phasing in his push pressing, and then there was like a cross section in the middle where the strict log kind of like dropped off, and the push press obviously took like priority, because that's his like comp style press.
So when it comes to strict log, do you prefer out of the rack, or do you prefer clean and strict?
I prefer out the rack, because I think when you clean a log as well, like, it's tough. And I think especially for someone like Andra, I think this is something that a lot of people, programming is very tactical as well. So I don't see the point in fatiguing Andra systemically, like cleaning a log, and then when his weaker events are his deadlift and more of his hip extension stuff. If that makes sense. So he's never gonna. He cleaned 220 at World Log Lift. So when we were doing all of the like work into the World Log Lift Championships, I was kind of like, right, well, he's not going to get any extra points for doing an extra 10 kilos on the log, because he's already going to win it. So I'd rather save that recovery debt from cleaning the log, doing it from rack, and put it into his deadlift, and put it into his arm over arm, and put it into his stones, because obviously every exercise has a cost recovery wise, doesn't it? So if we can save him a bit of fatigue from cleaning the log, obviously he was cleaning his heaviest logs going into the show, because there's a level of specificity that you need, isn't there? But in terms of like his off-season training and things like that, I'm thinking about bringing up his deadlift. So do I want to be cleaning a log like a few days before he deadlifts, or would I rather save his posterior chain so that he can pull better? Because he is bleeding points on a pull. He's not bleeding points on a log. And I think that that's something that Mitch does really well when we speak about his head. There's a reason that he's coming first and second in every event, and it's because in his training he can see where he needs points and where he doesn't, and he's willing to concede the points on the events where he doesn't need them by giving more attention to the other things in training from like an attention and recovery perspective as well.
So go but back to the log. So so for instance, I always struggle like out of a rack, just because when I feel out of the rack, it's not the same as I clean it. So I always like to, and that's like what you do in competition. So is it almost like a modified strict press with out of the rack, and just kind of just deal with? I feel like it feels heavier coming out of a rack.
Yeah, it's weird. I find that as well. Like, you almost do the clean and it lands in rack and it feels lighter and it feels easy, doesn't it, when you clean it? When I do it from rack, I tend to like have the log quite like tilted away from me, so that when I roll it and I get that like thoracic extension almost, it feels like I've just finished a clean, if that makes sense. So it feels a little more active than just like picking the log off the rack. It feels a bit more dynamic. Like I kind of roll into it like I'd roll out the top of a clean, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting, because it just I've been because I talked to Shane, because I was never a huge believer in the lean back method, because I have very much of an Olympic style. But now with like learning a little more and just seeing how Shane thinks about log training, he's using a lot of that lean back and just like not bringing the head through and in strict press log as more accessories, but not necessarily like what he would do on a game day, which makes a lot more sense. And then we have very similar thoughts when it came to push pressing a log in terms of the rack position and everything. So we had a lot of commonalities, but like because he also had that, of course, an Olympic background or likes weightlifting as well. So just trying to combine the two. But I understand a little more now. And then I'm starting to implement now. I've only been implementing for like 2 or 3 weeks, the lean back, and I already feel pretty strong, like getting stronger by the thing. It puts me in a weird position where I can't really breathe. I'm really taxing my upper back. But I feel that's going to strengthen kind of some of the weaknesses, maybe from prior, like really heavy logs. So I'm still going to give it a go.
Yeah. I think the good thing about doing lots of strict volume as well is that there's a repeatability to strict press. Whereas like with the Olympic style, like you can see weightlifters, you'll know this yourself. Like you can see weightlifters come out, miss a lift, go up and then get it because they did something wrong. And it's like, I feel like if you have that buffer of strict press strength behind it, you can afford to be a little bit, you can get your line a little bit wrong, or you can mess up your push press a little bit and still be okay because you've got the shoulder strength. Whereas kind of if all you've got's like a great push press mechanic, like that's fantastic, but you kind of like have to get it right. And there's no wiggle room for kind of like getting it a little bit wrong, which does happen sometimes, doesn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I look for. I want to try. My goal is to strict 180, maybe by the end of the year. So that's my goal. I'm at 170 already.
You'll do it.
If I can stay at a consistent 140 kilos, I'll be pretty good. But you know what's interesting? Of course, I've been following you since you broke out this scene. Of course, like you're actually OSG 2019 is really when I first started seeing you. So, but it's interesting though. Like, of course, like you have you're IPF world champ, so you have a great deadlift. You're pretty strong, great stones, like strong log. But like, what's your favorite event? Like, what gets you? Gets you going? Like, if there's a favorite event, like I love any overhead pressing, but like, what gets Luke Richardson going?
I love deadlifts. I love squatting. Squatting's my favorite lift.
Yeah. All right.
It's annoying because they don't do it ever. Really. Like they do it at Worlds, but I'd love them to like bring a squat in as like a substitute. Everyone says that the deadlift's like really, I know they say, like people say it's boring, you can't judge it. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with the world's strongest man style squat to the pads. I think that's absolutely fine. I think it's quite cool as well because I think you can grind squats out. Do you know what I mean? Like with deadlifts, it kind of, I don't know, visually, whereas a squat, it can look really hard. And I think with squats, you've always kind of got one more. Like you don't think you have another, and then you kind of do. Do you know what I mean? So visually, from that aspect, I think it'd be quite entertaining. But I just love training, mate, to be honest. Like I love squatting, I love deadlifting, I love all the overheads. Overheads are probably the most fun, I think. Unless you're training for reps in a comp and it's like axle or log 4 to overhead, because then obviously it's more of a cardio exercise, isn't it? But my favorite thing to train would probably be like if it was like max log or something. Like, not that it's particularly my best event, I just think it's the most fun.
It is.
Yeah, and then historically speaking, I do really well on loading in comps. I've won loading in the heats at Worlds. I've won loading pretty much every comp I've done.
But do you enjoy it?
I hate training loaded.
All right.
Yeah, I hate it. Like I hate training it, but I'll train it. But then I go to comp and I'm like it's quite fun. I like the different implements and stuff. But and then I love training everything, mate. Yeah, it's like so much fun in it. Like there's not really an event that. The only event that I wouldn't want to train that I don't think I'd enjoy is like tire flip or something.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's starting to get outdated. Just we're asking guys to be so big and strong, and then the tire is just so hard on our bicep tendons, and of course our tendons are already compromised. So I'm glad that it's not quite the thing anymore. I was really good at it back when, but
okay. Yeah, I've never done it, but it's one of them events where I'm kind of like, is there not a better way to test like this same strength by not doing this that just destroys everybody all the time? Like it's got a real history for it, hasn't it? So yeah, I'd be happy to see it gone forever.
Absolutely. But we're just talking about you're a former OSG 2019 champion, and that's how you got your big ticket to a lot of the of course Giants Live and then there to Worlds and all. But this year, there's going to be 4 former World's Strongest Man competitors in the Open, of course, in the OSG Open. So Oscar Zolkowski is coming back. So he's the Polish guy that was at the Arnold. You have Coco or Jean-Stéphane Corbouf. He represents France, but from Australia. You have Gabriel Rune from Canada. He made the finals. And then you have Spencer Remick, who's podium in the Open 3 times. So I think and then you have guys, you have a great American scene. You have a really good South African coming up that won an SDL show in Rain O'Neill. But as an OSG winner, what do you have for suggestions or advice that you lend to these guys to at least compete in that Open or make the finals?
I think OSG is a really different comp, and you know what? I actually I really respect, the guys who've quote unquote made it. Do you know what I mean? They've made it. Like Gabriel Room, I think he came where did he come at World's Strongest Man in the final?
I think he took 10th or 10th or 9th.
Right, but he's made the final. So it's not even like he's just been to Worlds. Like he's literally made the World's Strongest Man final. And I respect people who kind of even when they feel like they've arrived, I've made it to Worlds, I've made it to Giants, I've arrived. They're still humble enough to go, I'm going to earn my right back there because I don't feel like I've done enough to show that I should be. Do you know what I mean? Like Spencer Remick, he literally said himself, I think he won OSG Worlds or he podiumed there. He got invited to Royal Albert Hall.
He's gone in first, second, and third at OSG.
Right, Open. Okay. Yeah. And then he went to Royal Albert Hall, didn't do so well and was like, I didn't do well enough to deserve being invited back next year, so I'm going to go to OSG and do it again. I respect the fuck out of that. It's so honest and it's so humble. And I don't like when people say, OSG's beneath me. It's like, well, how's it fucking beneath you? Because every person who's won it, I won it, made the World's Strongest Man final the year after. Pavlo Kordiaka won it, made the World's Strongest Man final the year after. I think it was it 2022.
And then and then last year you had Crowder.
And then 2022 we had Yako, Matt Ragg, and Spencer. I think 2 of them made the final. And I think this is the thing. Do you know most Open guys, especially the World's Strongest Man level guys who don't want to go to OSG, it's because they know it's a fucking hard comp and there's killers there. And they don't want to show themselves up because they're already a bit like, I might not get invited back. So if I go there and I get spanked by these guys who haven't been there, then I'm definitely not getting invited back.
and everybody that has either a chip on the shoulder or want to make a name for themselves, they're doing 12-week preps. They're saving that. I always say, you have 2 good peaks in you in a year, and they're saving that peak for that year. So I think they're really kind of gear up for OSG. So I think it's gonna be pretty exciting.
I think this is the reality. If you're making top 10 at OSG. You could go to Giants Live, depending where you come. Obviously, the guys who've come first, second, third have proved that they can make a World's Strongest Man final. If you come top 10, you go to most Giants Lives and not look silly.
Absolutely. And then this past year, you had Wes Stravinsky take second at OSG and then make the final and taking 6th.
Wes, I competed against Wes in Glasgow, didn't I? Yeah. 6th in the World's Strongest Man final, fresh off OSG. And then you've got some guys who think they don't have to do OSG when they've never made a World's Strongest Man final. And then obviously at OSG Europes, we had Roman Grekov as well. He won OSG Europes and then came to Glasgow last week. Obviously destroyed that dumbbell medley. He's another guy who's up and coming and is going to be really good. He's only 27 as well, same age as me. And he's got a lot of muscle still to put on, so I think he's going to be a good one for the future as well. Yeah,
the Ukrainian scene's looking pretty hot. So with Roman, Pavlo, Alexei, and then there's another guy coming up he's competing at this OSG Open. His name is Oleg. He's a little shorter, but he's a muscle nugget. He deadlifts deadlifts 900 pounds, and he has a 210 log, and he's 5'9". So keep an eye out for Oleg. You still got another 10 minutes? I think we have I got a few more questions.
Fine, mate,
All right. Well, you fall asleep, I'll wake you up. But we've been pretty positive on this podcast, but I have a segment every episode of what grinds your gears. So in the world of strongman or training or gym lifting, we see on Instagram, is there anything that grinds Luke Richardson's gears?
without being too controversial, I think the thing for me that's interesting is, and I'm not going to say any names or anything like that because I can't be bothered. But like for me personally, it's an interesting thing, Strongman, because there is that element of like it's a very online sport, and it's obviously like very, very big on TV in the UK. Like in the UK, it's huge. Like if you do well in Strongman in the UK, like it's the best place to be. But for me personally, knowing obviously the scene and knowing what people are like, for me, it's like it's the way some people present themselves, and you kind of know that that's not what they're like, and then they kind of get to reap the benefits of being someone who they're not. And then they just continually prove that like they're not like it's just presenting. I don't like people who present. I like people who kind of like who are what they are. That's the way I am. Like I'm a, you know what I mean? Like I am what I am. I'm a fucking idiot. I don't get everything right all the time. It's whatever. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like some people like butter won't melt, and then they're not so nice. Do you know what I mean? But then they get all the best. That's the thing personally for me. Not even in a strongman thing. Just for like kind of like people in life in general. I like people who are straight up, honest people, like solid character. That'd literally be the only thing that I'd say. I love this sport, and I love most people in it. Like it's a great thing, and it's the best. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Like everything that kind of I've been able to do and got is because of the sport. So I don't really have much bad to say about it, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely. I always say social media should be an extension of yourself. It should be kind of what you want to put out there, what you want to be, and then if you're able to go into the camera or go into your phone and actually meet that person, it would be the same conversation on the same idea. That's always kind of what I shoot for.
Yeah.
Because and even with this podcast, I always say, of course, I like to be a funny guy, but I want to get his value. I want information. I want to put out good education for people to learn. But I had a funny, probably 5 or 6 episodes back. I said it a couple times, but Pa made it onto my grind my gears because he made a video called why Mitch is so good why Mitch is as good as he is. And then he went 10 minutes of like, Mitch did this, Mitch did that. And then he goes, Mitch is really good because he takes a lot of walks. The end.
That's such a Pa thing to say.
But I'm like, what does he know that I don't know? Like, so I tuned in and I got clickbaited, but it's all right.
Yeah. I love it. Pa is such an idiot. Honestly, he's like so. Like, do you know he's bringing out a Christmas song?
No, I did.
Yeah, like he voice noted me like the other week, and he was like, "Oh, I'm driving, but I'm driving to a studio to record a Christmas song," and I wasn't even surprised. I was just like, "Of course you're driving to a studio to." And do you know what the thing is? I've listened to it. It's really good. Like it's proper good.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Like it's amazing.
He's gonna give Eddie Williams a run for his money.
What part? I tell you what, he was singing well in this song. It could do something for him. This song, I tell you.
Jeez,
I think he's bringing it out on the 1st of November. So
that's only a few days away. So that'll be exciting. But so guys, we're wrapping up the show. But if you guys have any questions for Luke, I'll put him in now. But I'll leave you with we'll do this question now. So when everything is said and done, Luke, what are you looking to accomplish in the sport of strongman?
I've been sat there thinking, like when I was going through all the injuries and stuff, I kind of like lost belief that I could win worlds. I was like, it felt so far away because obviously when you have an injury, you try and like scale things back to like your next step. Because thinking about winning world's strongest man when I'm laid in a hospital bed and I can't walk is quite a like daunting prospect. So it's like, right, well, you focus on the next step, and it was absent from my mind for so long, whereas before it had been like at the forefront. It was like, right, win worlds, like you can do this, believe in it, blah blah blah. And I kind of forgot about it for long enough that I was kind of like, maybe I don't believe I can do it anymore. But I feel like now, this can be clipped in a few years, and we'll see if I'm right. I feel like now, if I don't get injured for like 3 years,
Knock
right?
On wood.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see. Right. So if I don't get injured for like 3 years, I think Mitch will do another like 3-4 years, maybe. So even if I cannot do enough with my body to topple King Hooper, right, I will hit like 30, 31 years old when he's retiring, maybe. And I think me with another 3 years training under my belt is going to be like, I think I can win worlds. I think I can win worlds a few times. Honestly, I believe it in my whole heart now, and I wouldn't say something like, because I just said 2 seconds ago I didn't believe I could do it anymore. Whereas now I'm thinking, I'm like, do you know what? I think I've got it. I think I've still got it. Do you know what I mean? So that'll be one of them. But then again, as well, just like, what do I want to achieve? It's weird. Like, it's weird that I actually said this at Glasgow. It's weird that what I've gone through has like inspired people, because I never thought I'd be an inspiration to anyone. I'm just living my life. I love strongman. Like, strongman for me is quite a selfish thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love training. I love competing. I'm a competitive guy, and I need an outlet for that competitiveness. So, yeah, I mean, if I could be a positive example to people, then even better. That's not what I'm going for. I'm just trying to be myself.
Absolutely.
But if I end up inspiring some people along the way, because it's weird, when I was getting all the injuries, it was, oh well, remember Big Z ruptured both his patellas, and then he's gone on to be the GOAT. And it'd be nice at the end of my career if people could say, oh, Luke Richardson, he had 5 surgeries and everyone thought he was done, and then he came back and won worlds a few times. I think that would make me really proud. I already am proud of myself.
I think it helps sharing the story, because, of course, I watching your story, even when I hurt my SI joints, I think it was getting some sciatica, I would listen to Martinez's story, and then at the time Martinez was coming back from injury, and then you came in to smash the Rogue, win the Arnold and stuff. So I feel like when it helps when competitors go out. Even Brian Shaw talks about when he won World's Strongest Man the year after, he had like a nerve injury in his hand. He couldn't grip anything, didn't do so well at the Arnolds, didn't do well at Worlds. And then he came back and smashed it and won another 3 titles. So I think it really helps when athletes do share those stories, because injuries, unfortunately, is part of the sport. It's strongman is the second most, I would say, injury sport out there outside of American football. It's funny. I would think rugby would be ahead of American football, but it's American football, and then it's strongman. So there is a very important in terms of keeping your body healthy. But going in terms of the question, so speaking of kind of resiliency and inspiring others, so Rachel, thank you so much for the super chat. Luke, your 4 recovery journeys remind me of Martinez Lisi's journey in 2020. The resiliency, the humility, the perseverance. You and Hooper saved me during a very dark time in 2023. Thank you for staying. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I mean. I never thought I'd be that person to anyone.
Sure, and then Rachel, yeah, you're that person to me, Luke.
Yeah.
And then she talked about Spencer. Spencer going back for a 4th time, 3 podiums, winning once, and still going back to OSG. Can't say enough about him. He is a fantastic guy. I've known Spencer for many years, and I think it'd be hard to count him out this year, because he's every time he's done it, he's podium. So I think he has figured out the algorithm to OSG. You figure out the algorithm, get the right inputs, maximizing the outputs, you're going to get in.
Thank you, Rachel. That was very nice. Thank you.
Rachel, do I have to share the $10 with Luke, or you know I'll do? What size shirt are you these days?
What, me?
Yeah.
Like a 3 or 4 XL usually.
Will you fit into a 3XL?
Yeah, probably.
All right, so I'm going to send you a Canby shirt. What do you think? They're just coming out by Odd
I'll
Objects.
wear it. Yeah,
so I'm coming out with 2. So I have the Italian Stallion shirt, and then I have the Canby shirt. So coming soon. So Odd Objects, Tommy Lavelle is helping me out. And then, of course, kind of keeping going through these questions. This is an interesting one. So Joseph Tower. So what are your thoughts on the strongest man on earth for next year? Would be great to see both you guys finally get an invite. It's interesting. I feel like, I think I can't speak for Luke, but for myself, my main goal right now would be getting back into World's Strongest Man. That would be huge, especially going there healthy and just showing the world what I can do. That's the first thing I want to do. But I also have the goal of winning World's Strongest Man. If you don't have that goal being World's Strongest Man, I don't know if you should be in the sport. But Strongest Man on Earth, I feel like it's one or the other. So right now I'm more focused on World's Strongest Man. I don't think I have the strength capacity yet to do like a lot of big shows. So I might, maybe in 2026, if I'm still building, staying healthy, I could do Strongest Man on Earth and World's Strongest Man. But what do you think about Strongest Man on Earth, or the Schmo?
I mean, personally, at this point in my career and everything I've been through, I imagine that if I have the year I'm I envision I'll have at the start of next year. I'll probably be invited to it, but I don't think I'll do it, to be honest. I think that it is what it is. It's a fucking brutal comp. Like if you have 8 events and you've got the 14 best guys in the world, 9 of them are zeroing something. They're not finishing arm over arms. They're not doing stuff like that. Like, you can call me a pussy if you want. Like, I'm completely cool with that. But at this point in my career, after 5 surgeries, and realizing that when I have these surgeries and disappears, like, no one really cares, I look at that comp at this point as, like, not a good idea, if that makes sense. Like,
it's heavy to be heavy, so it's
it's
like a huge durability contest.
Yeah, like max stone, max deadlift, max squat, max this, max that. Like, don't be wrong, I think it's like a fun comp, but like say, as someone who's had 5 surgeries and nearly had his career ended, I'd probably like to get at least 2-3 years under my belt where I'm like, oh, do you know what? Like, I'm not fragile before I even, because I actually am really good top end strength. So I think it's a comp I could do well at. But do I think I could survive a prep or survive that competition and have enough confidence that I'm not like, I'm going to risk everything for this one show? Not at the minute. No, I'd decline.
I think that's pretty fair. It's a very heavy show. So just getting back to our early conversation, Lala said also no rest days in between the days so 4 straight days of competition for World's Strongest Man, potentially speculating for next year. Bailey says, if you guys could go travel back in time to your 16-year-old selves, how would you change your training / lifestyle to better accommodate Strongman? That's a good one. You want to do this first, or should I go first?
You could go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
You know, I wish I bought into Strongman a little earlier. So I didn't start. I was wrestling at this time. I was playing football and wrestling in Massachusetts. And I think, of course, I love sports. And then I started Strongman when I was 22. So at the time, though, I had when I got introduced to Strongman by a bodybuilding coach, and I didn't know there were weight class items, and then I kind of jumped in. But Strongman in 2012 wasn't as popular as it was, I would say, post-pandemic. This is like right now a golden era of Strongman. I hope it keeps continuing. Hopefully 2030 will be a new golden era of Strongman. But at the time, I didn't really buy in. I wasn't really focused. I was partying a lot in my early 20s. I've been competing for 13 years, so I didn't really buy in until I was like 9 years in. So I wish I bought in a little earlier, was a little more motivated. But I think the biggest thing I would try to learn, I'm Italian, I'm pretty stubborn. So I would probably try to learn from as many people as I could back then. And really, I did learn a lot, but I would try to even learn even more. So the endless pursuit of knowledge. But what do you think, Luke?
I mean, to be honest, I kind of grew up in what you consider like the strongman incubator, to be honest. I had like a massive sporting background before I got into powerlifting. I started powerlifting. I trained when I was training powerlifting at Darren Sadler's gym. I was training regularly with like Benny Magnuson, Eddie Hall had come in, Terry Hall had come in. I met Andy Bolton, like my second training session there. I was like 17, 18 years old. I was training with Terry, Benny, Darren, Andy Bolton, like anyone I met 4 like in 2017, something like that. Like I was around it.
That's funny. I met Thor for the first time in 2017. That's pretty funny. And he was huge. That was probably almost a little bigger than he was now. He was enormous.
Yeah, he came over to stay at Darren's because it was trying out the car walk for Europe's Strongest Man. Maybe it was 2017 because I'd won my first European powerlifting title like the week before he came. But for me personally, what would I change? Do you know what? The only thing I'd change is I'd put my head that's in me now in like 23-year-old me when I was going like ego insane. Because up till that point, like when I was powerlifting, like I was 21 years old, I'd squatted like 900 pounds in sleeves. I benched like near 500 pounds. I pulled like 400 kilos. Do you know what I mean? I'd have liked to have probably done a little bit more like general strength training at that point, because I was very specifically a powerlifter at that point. So the problem was when I transitioned over to strongman, after 2 sessions, I was one motion in like a 400-pound stone, but I'd not trained biceps for like 3 years. You know what I mean? Which I think is probably why I've had a higher injury risk on certain exercises. But apart from that, the thing that got me injured was my brain. So I would take my brain out and give this brain to that person, and then just go, here, if you just don't get hurt for 2-3 years, Luke, you probably win World's Strongest Man soon. Do you know what I mean?
Is it a Tin Man in Wizard of Oz that is asking Oz for a brain?
I've never watched it.
If I only had a brain, the song.
That's what literally the only thing that I'd change is if we could is I'd bestow the level of wisdom that I've got now, which isn't much, on my former younger self, and that'd be it. But yeah. I don't regret what my former younger self did. I'd go to the gym, train for like 6-7 hours. I didn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And there's a reason why I got as good as I did in the IPF, because I've trained like a monster. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it definitely shows. But I think you have to learn from your mistakes, and you have to take risks. So that's half the battle. But Rachel says I can do whatever I want with the money. So thank you, Rachel. And Joseph says great conversation. So, so I pulled up your YouTube. Are you any plans on revamping your YouTube? There's only three videos on there.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing it actually, because the problem is with me is that I'm a bit of a perfectionist as well. So I'm kind of like, oh, if I don't have a camera guy and all this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. But after doing all the videos with Pa, who just puts his phone on, it doesn't take much. Yeah, like he just puts his phone on the thing, and I talk, and then I read the comments, and people are like quite pleased to see me online. I'm not really an online kind of guy. But it's not because I don't like you'll know yourself, we're an hour and 60 minutes in. I don't mind talking. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I might do. I maybe will. Possibly not.
Instagram, of course, you have. I'll put your description below for on the record. So if you guys are interested in his journey, follow him on Instagram. Are you on any other social medias that we should know about now? And then if people are interested in your coaching, they should go through MST, or should they message you directly?
Me or Shane. Yeah.
All right. And just say, I want Luke Richardson training. I want to do strict press. Is that what they should say?
I'm actually quite busy there. I've got really good clients. You know, they're nice. I like coaching my clients that I coach now. They're really.
Do you have it mostly UK guys, or do you have any guys in the States?
I coach who are a few of my standouts. Obviously, I coach Andrea. I coached Pa for Britain's, Europe's, and Worlds last year. I coach Ray, who came fourth at under 64 women's at OSG Worlds last year.
Oh, cool.
I coach Ryan Bennett, who's been at Britain's Strongest Man. I coach a young guy, Jan Lancier, who's coming up, a lad from Czech. I started coaching a fellow called Jacob Finity as well.
Oh, I know Jacob. Yeah.
Started with him a little while ago. And I've got some really good up and coming. I've got a really good up and coming female called Grace as well. She'll probably pull 300 key next year.
Oh,
I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got some fucking my clients are savages, mate. Yeah, so it's good. I enjoy it.
So watch out, Lucy. But if Evan does come back to England, you should do more videos, because people do enjoy those videos. So to wrap up the show, we'll leave one last piece of advice. So what's we did a lot of advice this show, but what's one last piece of advice you want to leave the listeners?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. What, staying on subject? What's one piece of advice? I don't know. Be yourself. Be someone you can be proud of. That'd be what I say. Be someone you can be proud of.
Awesome. Well, guys, stay strong and tune in next time. Take care.
Great. See you later.